Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Harlos family, I'd like to extend our deepest gratitude for coming out today to celebrate Hans's life. Our plan this afternoon is to have 3 close friends and family share some favorite memories with you about Hans's life. Closer? Okay. Better? Okay. We'll then invite you to stick around for a reception in this room to eat some delicious food and raise a glass together to Hans. Hopefully we can keep the stories flowing at that point. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sam. I'm Hans's stepdaughter. Hans came into my life when I was 15 years old. My mom's colleague had passed along her number to his doctor friend who he knew that she'd click with. Hans had fallen in love at first sight with my beautiful mother's photograph. He decided he's gonna have to woo her. So my first memory of Hans is of his voice on my answering machine, leaving a series of incredibly lengthy voicemails begging her to go on a date with him. I distinctly remember lying on my mom's bed and listening to Hans's third voicemail, memorable because he had chosen to serenade my mom with a made-up song, guitar riff included. I looked at my mom and said, "You have to go on a date with him." On her first date, though, she wasn't convinced. He wore his only dress shirt, one of Nick's oversized Volcom specials, took her to a fancy restaurant, ordered great wine, but then stabbed food off her plate when he thought she was done eating. Anyway, she went for a second. This time he brought her a CV or a resume listing all his achievements and qualifications to get the job as her last first date. And although none of those tactics should have been successful, she was hooked. That CV was taken to her fridge for many years to come. Eventually, she was convinced it was time to introduce Hans to us, her children. The day we met, my brother was still a little kid at the time and had been recovering from the stomach flu. He hadn't eaten for days, and when Mom asked what he felt like, he said, "McDonald's." Mom said no. Dr. Harlos brought over chicken McNuggets, a doctor-approved flu remedy. He won Richard's heart over immediately. I was 15 at the time. I remember this because I'd been dating my first boyfriend for 4 months longer than Mom had been seeing Hans. I used this fact to leverage my boyfriend joining us on our first family trip to Whistler. Mom found the argument that Jordan and I had been together longer understandably annoying. Hans laughed, said I should go to law school, and invited him along. As I stand here today as a lawyer, I would say that was probably the moment that he won my heart over as well. Over the years, Hans has never tried to replace my dad. He respected that I already had a good one. Instead, he was a father figure and a friend. He was another parent who loved and celebrated us. He was there for advice, to make life more fun, to proclaim that every boyfriend I've ever had is simply not good enough, and of course, to help me persuade my mom into letting me escape her very strict bubble. He has made lasting impressions on everyone here over the years, but there are 3 lessons he has imparted on me that I thought I would share. Number 1, don't sweat the small stuff. And really, most of life is the small stuff. When I graduated from high school, Hans and my mom took my brother and I on a road trip through Europe. Beyond it being incredibly ambitious to take a 17-year-old and a 12-year-old away together before the rise of smartphones, it was a real bonding trip for our family. We rented a car and we drove ourselves through Germany, Austria, and a bit of northern Italy. At one point, we were pulled over, and Hans and my mom were checking us into a hotel, leaving Richard and I in the back of a car. Deciding I leaned over the back seats, turned the keys of the car, and the standard car promptly rolled back down down a steep cobblestone street, crashing into a parked car behind it. Naturally, I sobbed that I had just caused an accident in a foreign country, and then panicked at how my minimum wage job at Sport Check was ever going to cover the damage. When Hans got back to the car, he didn't even frown. He hugged me, told me to stop crying, it was just money, and he didn't bring it up again other than to tease me. He never guilted me or let it even ruin 5 minutes of our trip. He literally shrugged it off as if it was nothing. No blame, he said, laughing, and we just moved on. In all the time I've known Hans, he's never raised his voice at me. He's never caused undue stress or made me feel bad about a decision I made. He's always kept cool and a positive attitude, and he's always reminded us to do the same. Lesson 2. Travel as much as possible and outside of your comfort zone. We all know the travel bug bit Hans. He took 6 or more big trips a year, and he called it Tarzan traveling, where you would book a trip immediately after getting home from your last adventure. Through his stories and trips we all took together, I decided to travel the world too, and he taught me to embrace the love of adventure travel rather than the comfort of a vacation. On our last trip together, Hans, my mom, and I went to Hawaii to hike the Kalalau Trail along the Nepali coast in Kauai, Hawaii. It's an 11-mile hike out. You sleep on a secret beach only accessible through this hike, and then you hike back in the next day. Hans and I had prepared for it for months, and we planned to drag Mom along. The night before we were scheduled to head out, we were at a restaurant where the waitress pleaded with us not to go out because the weather was quite rainy. We started the hike anyway. Somewhere along the route, it started to rain. Mom strained her hamstring. We lost our way a few times because the trails were washed out, and so we decided to turn around. The hike was hard, and when we finally got back to the beginning, there was this huge beach and only one other group there. We ran into the water and ended up sharing a drink with this other group in the ocean. Well, almost all of us. Hans ran back and forth on the beach in the rain until he met his very high step goal, and then he also came to join us. It was our best night of the trip together and a great memory. Also, it's for the best that the trail bested us because the storm got so bad that night that we lost power on the island for several days after. But I definitely look forward to finish tackling that hike at some point in his memory. Lesson number 3. If Costco has a very good sale of an item you want, buy 5 of them. I'm kidding, but we all know he did do that. If you have a passion, go for it, work at it, love it, buy it, share it, embrace it. Jump on the opportunities that life presents you with. Hans lived his life to the absolute fullest and did what he wanted to do. He taught us to enjoy fine wine and cheese, not because he's a snob, anyone knows Hans knows that's not the case, but because it brought him joy that he wanted to share. He taught us to ski out because in his opinion, it was the best skiing available. Hans supported every passion that any of his kids had and encouraged us to love whatever we chose for our career so that it doesn't always feel like work. Whether it be him and Racine's shared love of healthcare, Richard finding his dream job with the city, my love of law, or Nick's passion for snowboarding, then wake skating, then Costa Rican bed and breakfast hosting, and then finally carpentry. He was all in with his support for us every step of the way. In Hanzo's mind, there was nothing worse than apathy. He valued passion and excitement for both the big and the little adventures in life. And I hope to never lose the value system that he's imparted on me over the years. With that, I will hand the mic over to Hans's best friend, Terry, to share a few of his shenanigans with us, and then followed by Dr. Peter Cameron, who's a long-term colleague of his. Thank you.
Okay, as I look out here, it sort of worried me when I came here at first and I saw an open bar at 1 o'clock and me speaking at 2:45. I got a lot of my old football buddies out there, and I sort of thought of that, the Blues Brothers movie. Remember, they're at the country music thing and the thing drops down and you start getting pelted with stuff. So if you don't like it, just sort of relax and It's not going to take long. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce myself. For those who don't know me, my name is Terry Atkinson, and I've been a friend of Hans for nearly 40 years. See, I never read that out loud before. Sounds like the start of an AA meeting. Not that I know anything about it. I'll ask Kip later, though. He'll tell me. I want to thank the Harlos family for letting me be part of this season of life. Greg and I put together a few humorous anecdotes of things that have happened over the years. We came up with a few stories I hope you enjoy. And if you don't enjoy them, I want you to blame my wife because she edited this and she took all the offensive stuff out. I said, I know his friends. I couldn't possibly offend anybody. I know. Anyways, much of our time was spent playing sports with one another, and at the end of most games we would sit around and argue about politics, the economy, what's going on in the world. And you know what, and we played for years and no one's opinion changed over the last 10 years, but they still argued about it. We played 5 days a week ever since maybe 5 years ago, and I know I don't look at it, but you should see the other fat guys I play with. I mean, they're way worse than me. We played through the pandemic due to a loophole that allowed us to exercise for our mental health. But the last time I want to bring out, because what we always did was laugh. Like, we always had fun. And the last time we had a laugh was, Hans was very weak at the time, and we had went to the Fig and, I don't know what it's called, Fig and Feta, that's it. And we had just finished our lunch, and Hans couldn't finish his meal. We had an attractive waitress that looked at him and looked at him and his leftovers sitting in front of himself, and she said to him, "Would you like a box? Do you want a box for that?" And one of the guys sitting there said, "Well, he's getting a little old to box, but he'll probably wrestle you for 15 minutes." And he says, one of the guys says, if we weren't 60 or 70 years old, we'd be thrown out of the restaurant now for that kind of. One of my first recollections of Hans was probably in the early 80s, something like that. We were sitting at a table at the old squash club on Huron Street, and he looked at me and he brings stuff out of the blue. He looks at me and he says, "How long can sheep go without food?" I know. A sheep? I'm not a farmer, for Christ's sakes. I said, I don't think it, I don't know, but I said, I think they need water more than food. And he didn't really say any more than that. And I get a call from him. I get a call from him the next day. He goes, "Are you going down to the club?" I said, "Yeah, I play at 1 o'clock. He says, "I'll meet you down there." I'm sitting there, he walks in, he goes, 5 days. What are you talking about? They can go 5 days without food. He'd promised one of his patients or his friends he'd look after the guy's sheep while he went on vacation. Never went there once. Seriously, never went there once. I said, "Are any still alive?" He just gave me the... Oh, God, I'll tell you. He said it looked like Custer's Last Stand. Bodies were everywhere. He wasn't sure if they had died from starvation and then got eaten by the coyotes, or if the coyotes got them first. Oh, God. Anyways, I left the part out here. I looked up on or Googled eccentric. A person whose behavior is unconventional and slightly strange. I'm telling you, if his picture isn't beside that one in the picture. When Hans was first living on his own, a few guys from our football team and a couple guys from the squash club decided that he was sort of lonely, and we'd get him out and doing stuff. So we'd go to Backstreet Chevy's on a Thursday night and have our 5-cent wings, and then go over to Jet North for a few drinks, and then back to the Hans's house on Campbell Street, which was it was a real treat. But we'd always end up back there about 1 o'clock in the morning. Every Thursday night, it was the same ritual. He'd walk in, it'd be like 1:30 in the morning, turn the stereo to like 9, and the outside speakers would come on. And within minutes, the phone would ring. And he'd always say, "Can you get that? It's Milan Zombrak." Goes the next door neighbor. Turn that music down. And every Thursday it was the same thing. And it wasn't bad for us, but who I felt sorry for was that poor guy getting the root canal the next morning at 7:30. That mad dentist in there just digging into his mouth. So being Hans' neighbor was good in one sense. You didn't need a stereo. And Milan and Judith were very tolerant people. I mean, his house, it became, at some point, I think most single guys in Collingwood had lived there. Like, if you broke up with your wife, you went to Hotel Harlos, right there. Yeah, you had a room. You might have to share with a couple guys, but you had a room. And anyway, so they rarely complained. I mean, they were good to him. They let us play in their tennis court. And the weekends, there'd be 100 cars in and out of there, up and down the driveway, and they never much ever complained. But one night, he had this dog. And I don't know why he ever had a dog, because I don't even think he liked dogs. But he had a dog, and it became free range. He just went anywhere in town, anywhere he wanted. And so, Milan called one day, a little perturbed. He'd been waiting for his friend from, I don't know whether it was the East Coast or somewhere. He was coming to visit him anyways. And he went out and got these 2 special cuts of beef. And the phone rings, and the dog had went over and ate his meat. And Milan was pissed. And it meant, as you said, did sweat a bit. He just went on, "Oh yeah, well I told him I'd get another meat." Of course, that wasn't what he was mad about. Hans jammed more into a day than anyone I've ever met. He may have only lived 67 years, but he jammed 130 years of activities into those 67 years. He had no sooner finished one activity and he was on to another. And we often, I think I heard someone else here ridicule him about his eating. I'm telling you, it wasn't pretty watching him eat lunch. It was awful. He was always late because he'd been doing something else first. And he'd be in the squash club and we'd be waiting to play. He'd be bent over eating a sandwich and the food's all over the place and the janitor just followed him around, basically. But there's one of the fellows that played with us, he was actually the second best insurance agent in our group. He was coming down the new extension or the bypass on 26 just when it was open. And of course Mike, like Hans, always late and very agitated. There's a guy in the slow lane going, or in the fast lane going 10 kilometers too slow. The slow lane therefore backed up and he couldn't get by. And he said he was livid, late. And he said, so the slow lane eventually pulls up to the guy that's slowing the traffic down in the fast lane. And Mike's got a high truck. And he said he looked down, and there's Hans, driving in the slow lane, eating a bowl of soup. Okay, I can see a sandwich, but a bowl of soup. He said he had it between his legs. And he was looking down like this every 3 seconds. He was looking down. It just made no sense. I sort of got to the end of the stories I wanted to tell. There's about 1 million of them, so I'm not going to keep you here. But there's just a couple quick ones that I did just before I came over here because it hit me. Hans parties were legendary. And I remember, the one I remember the most, and it's funny, I remember the date, September the 9th, 2000. I brought a friend up from Toronto, and he just moved up here, and of course, Hans, bring him! There's 900 people there anyway, so it probably didn't matter, but so I bring him over. So we walking up the driveway, walk into the backyard, you had to sort of go around and turn, and it looked like something out of a Disney movie. There's a rock band playing at the, with the amp turned to 9. There's probably 70, 80 people in the backyard, 20 people in a pool, 2 girls in bikinis jumping up and down on a trampoline. And my buddy looks and goes, "Is this what the parties are like in Collingwood?" I said, "Well, mostly." So anyways, that's going on, and he's hired this band, a good band, paid a good buck for it, but no time at all, I don't know what time it was, police show up. The people on Birch Street are complaining, and Birch Street was about 2 miles from his house. I have to admit, it was up on a hill, and it did echo down, but Birch Street. So anyways, the police are there, and they said, you're going to have to turn this whole thing down. And my buddy was a lawyer, so he thought he'd go over and sort of, help a bit, see if he could work stuff out. But they didn't know that most of the police at that time were our buddies from sports teams. We were all about the same age. We all knew each other, and the guy looked at Hans and said, "But we got a major fire going on downtown, and nobody's going to get back here for at least 4 hours." That was the day what was the name of that? I can't remember the name of the Temple building. The Temple building burned. That's right. And half the main street was on fire, so they pretty much give him free rein to finish his party. Just one more thing. And this, again, I thought of it this morning and made me laugh. We were talking about how he'd like to scrimp a bit. If he could save a buck or two, he was good with that. So back, it'd be maybe the mid-'80s, doesn't matter. We're at the club, and we're talking, and one of our friends is coach of the teams that's in the Vanier Cup. So we thought, well, you know what? We'll go down. Hopefully his team will win, and we'll party with all the football players after. And so off we go, and he says, neither one of us, of course, want to drive after the game because we're going to be drinking. And he says, we'll just park where we're going to stay. So we go over to Gerrard Street, park there, and I figure we're staying at the Chelsea, because I never paid any attention. And I said, okay, well, are we going to go and get a room? He goes, no. He says, we stay here for nothing. I said, well, we're downtown Toronto, where are you going to stay for nothing? Well, I don't know, I can't remember all the story now, but either it was an intern or he worked in a merge at Toronto General, something. He had a key to where the doctors sleep. He hadn't been there for 15 years. And it was in the bowels of the hospital. He took me down there. I finally said, I am not sleeping in that room because there's liable to be 2 other guys come in and sleep with you. You go, no, it's great. But you just can't wake them up. They've probably been working for 36 hours. I said, there's no way, and you know what? I'm sleeping with some guys going to come in. So I finally talked him into getting a room at the Chelsea, but he used that room like his private studio for 15 years. Anytime he went to Toronto, he just went there. And I said, is there no security? He goes, Well, yeah, but, I get the key. I can remember I laughed at him. I said to him a few years later, I said, "You still going to Toronto using that road?" You remind me of Kramer from Seinfeld. Oh, no, there was a problem. Apparently, the one guy that was sleeping there didn't like him having this little radio on while he was trying to sleep. Oh, God. Yeah. Anyways, there's no end to stories. The last 5 years, I'm going to be honest, were the happiest years I've ever seen him all around. He was real happy with the way his life was going. He had his practice was cut back a bit, so he had time for the sports and the family, and he liked traveling. We would sit after, him and I would sit after squash, we'd play, but I haven't had to work for, I've been retired for 12 years, I haven't worked for 22, so always had time. So, but we'd sit and we'd talk, and he'd talk about, his mom back in Winnipeg, and, how well she was doing for her age, her cooking, her driving misadventures, because apparently she's 97 now and doesn't get too good at the parking. She gets kind of close to other cars. And his mom's famous key lime pie. He was happy that Nick had found his niche in the construction business, and he was convinced, the guy was convinced, Nick could do anything. We were at the end. We were talking about he and I were going to build a tennis court, and I said, well, we've got to get this all laid out and everything. It's kind of costly. Nick can do it. I said, just because you're in contracting doesn't mean you can build a tennis court. Come on, he built houses, but he was concerned. He was convinced. Nick could read up about it, and he'd know how to do it, and I believe it, because you know what? That's the German in people, right? It bypassed him. He had no building ability. I used to question him being a German. I said, there's certain nationalities know what to do. I look back and I see my friend Mike Tandy back there, an Italian fellow. When I was building my first house, he said to me, "You're going to brick it?" I said, well, I hadn't thought about it, but I said, why, can you do that? He says, well, I'm Italian. I'm sure as soon as I touch him, I'll know what to do. Sini was his princess. He was so proud when she became a nurse. And on the last day I saw him, we were together. He was barely strong enough to speak. And what he did, he asked Sini, he says, Sini, go and show Terry your new job. And he was so proud of her, being a negotiator in the St. Thomas Police Force. He had his badge, had him show me her picture in uniform, and he was very, very proud dad. The grandchildren, we were always part of our discussion, as we were the same age, as ours were the same age. He was always talking what they were doing, how one was different from the other, and he was just a proud, proud grandpa. And Mary Lisa, wow, she's a rock. I tell you, after he met, there's always a circus going on behind him, but he was stabilized after he wasn't running off all over the place. And he was a very, very happy man. I could go on with endless stories with squash games, tennis games, volleyball, Campbell Street, trips, Oktoberfest, Super Bowls, Grey Cups, Vanier Cups. But I'm going to end with this one. And this reminds me of Greg. Greg told me this story. Greg had a 93-year-old neighbor that lived near his house, and Greg lives near Aurelia, which is probably 35 minutes from where Hans was in Elmville. And it was stormy. She couldn't get out. She needed this medication. So Hans, being the guy he is, drives over in a snowstorm with the medication that he got and administered the medication. That's the type of guy he was. And he went one step further. This is what makes him the Hanzo. He shoveled her driveway before he left. How good is that? Now, there's a house call. Shoveled her driveway. I'm going to leave you with that. That's all I got, but he's leaving a big hole in my heart, and I miss the guy. Thank you very much.
How do you follow that? Oh, Hanso left us too early. Too early. I know that he has touched the lives of every single person in this room. So I'm not going to regale you with stories of the adventures with Hans Harlos. I'll leave that to you to communicate with each other in the celebration that goes on after these talks. I've been trying to distill the essence of Hans into one word. He knew who and what he was. He knew he was a skilled, knowledgeable, empathetic physician. He knew he was generous. He knew that he was an athlete, of which he would always remind us when we were playing sports with him. He knew he was a good father. He was a good grandfather and a good husband. And he thought he could sing. In a word, he was loud. And not in the word because you could hear him on the golf course when you were 2 holes ahead of him, the laughter extolling or mocking his compatriots who were playing golf with him. His enthusiasm, energy, and total self-confidence, sometimes misplaced, just swept everyone up in his wake. So, I was fortunate and grateful to be able to call him a dear friend. So let us celebrate his life today and continue to honor him by living, laughing, and loving loud.
Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you all for coming. This is actually very overwhelming. I'm going to keep this as short as I can and try to make it as fun as I can. So, this goes out to the little boy from Winnipeg who was forced at times to go out in the backyard and dig out frozen bread because that's where my grandma kept it. This goes to the man who skipped grade 2 or 3, I'm not too sure because the story always changed. He was incredible at school, he excelled. He actually was smart enough to take a German course in high school, knowing full well that the highest mark got a free trip to Germany. He was fluent in German. So, the only problem was he didn't have money to get to Toronto because that was the ticket rate. So he actually hitchhiked there. He did this twice, if the story is true. He did it again to go to school. I'm not too sure. To the man that crashed his car to get the insurance money, borrowed a helmet from his friend, and when they brought the car in, there was a big dent in the roof, so they were like, well, why is there a dent on the roof? He crashed into a light, and the light actually fell off and landed on the roof of the car, but he still got away with it. To the man who loved his friends so dearly, like Terry said, that Campbell Street house was such a pinnacle in Collingwood of fun and laughter and enjoyment, and it then turned into, from the old guard to the new guard, which was my friends. And like Terry said, he took in strays. He took in a lot of my friends that were strays, and it wasn't, if you got divorced, it was more if you were mad at your parents and you needed somewhere to stay, come to my house. He also outfitted that house with tons of toys for us. The Mustang, the old Sea Ray, which I believe he called Wet Dreams. The four-wheeler and all that. The Mustang being a huge memory in my life because we were able to drive it before we had a license because my dad let us. And we would go to the hardware store and grab stuff for skate ramps, except we would go there and we wouldn't have straps to tie anything down. So we were just like, we'll just throw our hands out the window and hold the plywood on top and drive home. It's fine, right? It says Hanze on the license plate. They're not going to pull us over. To the man who took us to Killbear every year, camping was huge. It was a necessity for at least 2 weeks every year. And it was family time for us. It was so important to him. Building friends, the Rattans always came, and the best part was actually when I hit about 12, when he would go home to work an emerge shift for the weekend and leave us there alone. To the man who let a 13-year-old drive on I-95 down to Myrtle Beach one year because he was tired, and we convinced him that it was okay because, we're on a highway, we're all going one way, we can't get in that much trouble. Warren Sly. Waking up in the parking lot of McDonald's going, where are we? And seeing Warren eating a, McDonald's breakfast sandwich. My dad running in, going, where are we? And Warren's like, Myrtle Beach. To the man who believed in me more than anything in the world, which is, what doctor lets their child drop out of high school after grade 10 and move to Whistler and pursue his dreams? He had more faith in me than I could ever have faith in myself, because if I was my father, I would be shitting my pants. Also, I can't reiterate that even anymore. That's so big for me. And just seeing the best in me and everyone. That's not just me. It was everybody. And then also by becoming a doctor by osmosis with all my friends, asking me to ask my father if, what's this, what's that? My dad said, send pictures, and then eventually it got to the point where it wasn't send pictures, it was just, Nick, just tell me what they need, because I don't want to see that. I always said I'd take over the family business if I could. Also to him giving me these and telling me to go to London when I go to the bar and pretend that I just got off a shift or was out of school, which worked really well actually, because there was a Dr. Harlos and his name were on some of them, so it worked great. To the man also, speaking of his doctor and how kind he was the psych home he dealt with and how patient he was with all of them. And the fact he would, we called him the Dream Team. There's an movie from the late 80s. I don't know if any of you have seen it. And I'd be working at the Wave Runner Rentals in Wasaga, and he would go screaming by on the boat with 8 psych patients with life jackets, done up wrong, or none of them on, or one backwards, or no one knew what was going on. And then I'd be, I'm like, what was that, my dad? Filling gas, and then they'd come in, and it was my dad, and they're all waving at me, and they'd go get ice cream, and, just who does that? I'll never understand. To the man who loved his family more than anything and made every event such a big thing. Didn't matter if it was some obscure birthday for someone he didn't know, or my kids, and going all out and blowing up 100 balloons and putting them in a trampoline and then them all over the lawn, and I got to pick them all up. But I just, and I would be upset at him, but now it's like, I just wish that was, he was still doing that stuff. But it was everybody. Even if he just met you. It was incredible to see. To the proud German. For you in the back, it says, "You bet your bratwurst I'm German." His favorite T-shirt. He loved his soccer, he loved World Cup, he loved his beer, he loved his heritage, he loved all of it. He was such a proud German. And this is what he would wear. Most of the time embarrassing me in front of everybody, but now I love it. And the last thing I'm going to leave with you is I found the other day in just his paperwork. It was a will of his from about 2004, a very old one. But on the envelope, it said will, of course, and it just said, "When you open this, I will be gone. Work hard, love a lot, and love a lot."
I know. I don't have my dad's genetics. So firstly, thank you everyone for coming here. It's been amazing to see so many people that my dad has touched their lives. It shows that my dad was deeply loved and respected in this community. Knowing my dad, he wouldn't want us sitting here crying, so I've got some really funny stories I want to share with you of my experiences on my father-daughter yearly trips that I would take with my dad. So if you don't know my dad, he is very, let's do this, let's do that. There's no rules, we don't follow them. And I am very, we gotta follow the rules, we're doing everything it says. And so the adventures were quite funny. My first trip I took with my dad was to Hawaii. It was my graduation gift from high school. And my best friend was there. And of course, boy crazy, me, I was on the beach and trying to talk up the surfers, and all of a sudden my best friend and I turn and look and we see this man walking towards us in this lime green thong banana hammock, and we're like, oh my God, look at that guy, and we're laughing and we're making fun, and all of a sudden I stop dead in my tracks and I go, holy shit, that's my dad. Yep, and I was mortified. Thought it was great, but I was mortified. Another adventure was Dad and a couple of my friends were away. We were in a hot tub, we're hanging out. Dad comes over, he just finished working out, so he's all sweaty. He's just standing in his little shorts, and he looks at my friends and I and says, "Do you guys smoke after sex?" And we're looking at him like, what are you even talking about? And he just takes his shorts and he pulls the elastic and lets it go, and all this baby powder comes flying out. And he goes, "'Cause I do." One of my last adventures with my dad was to, we did Quebec City, Montreal, and then Ottawa. And this was back in April. And we went skiing, and Dad loves skiing. I love skiing. I like the Blue Hills. I'm very easy. And I said to my dad, okay, where are we going? So he told me the hill. I got really excited. I'm looking at it. I'm like, Dad, there's a run called Racine. That's the run we're going to take. And he goes, well, what color is it? I'm like, well, it's a blue. Well, no, we don't want to go on that. It's a blue. Let's find black diamonds. He wouldn't even go with me on the run that was called Racine because it wasn't hard enough for him. So I went down alone and he met me at the bottom. So that's my dad in a nutshell. He's fun, he's exciting, and he doesn't care who he embarrasses. Thank you.
Anyway, that is all. Thank you so much. Please stick around, have some drinks, enjoy some food. I'd love to hear some stories from some people I haven't met. I'm sure I've met most of you, but I'm the clone. So yes, please stick around and enjoy it. Thank you so much. My dad would love to have you. I wish he was here to see all this. This is incredible. Thank you so much.
Trunks of memories still come. We found things to do in stormy weather. Long may you run. Long may you run. Long may you run. All of these changes have turn away. If you tear yourself into again, if I could, yes I would. If I could, I would let it